Now, in the next 25 minutes, I'm going to encompass for you the conversation that has been had with the External Affairs Minister, particularly about terrorism, how India has been able to handle it successfully in the last 10 years and the transformation that has been had. My editor-in-chief, Rishabh Gulati, had a conversation with him. Rishabh, what were the key points that he mentioned about?
Okay, let me just draw on the premise, okay? And the premise is very simple. Did we really believe that after 26/11, that sending dossiers to Pakistan would mean that the Pakistani system, dominated by the terrorists who perpetuated the attack, would then somehow kick into action and a judicial process will happen and Hafiz Saeed and Zakiur Rahman Rakvi would face prosecution, serious prosecution? Did we really think that sending dossiers was an effective methodology? Terrorism is a complex question. Like it or not, and much criticism has to come for the Americans for Guantanamo Bay and Iraq and Afghanistan and how they behave and the Patriot Act and this, that. But like it or not, the Americans have successfully all but eliminated terror attacks on their soil. They have other problems, gun problems, drug problems. But when it comes to terrorism, they've been successful. So the complexity of the issue is still something that we could have done better at. And that is the juxtaposition of this conversation. That was the methodology of sending dossiers, sending notes verbal, summoning the High Commissioner while they were operating out of New Delhi. Was that an effective strategy in controlling terrorism? I'm not even going into 370. It's a whole different conversation. But in the other parts of the country where it was routine, in Delhi, in Bangalore, of course in Mumbai. Now, in the last 10 years, there have been terror attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. Look outside Jammu and Kashmir, where the insurgency of across the border terrorists is still going on, not eliminated completely, reduced. But you think of 2017, the Ujjain train blast, okay, and a few people were injured. Recently, the Rameswaran cafe, one person, a couple of people injured over there.
Yeah.
But when it comes to what was routine, I remember growing up in Delhi, several terror attacks have taken place in familiar places, Connaught Place, Greater Kailash. We've seen friends and family members, have near misses to bomb blasts. That's to a new generation, that's an anathema. They don't know what that is, and that's how it should be. So the premise is very simple. While we were doing dossier diplomacy, and I'm sorry to say, while we were also wondering about saffron terror, okay, and all sorts of other cognomens and connotations we're coming out with, has there been a better, more effective strategy in dealing with terrorism, or is it that we just gotten lucky? Okay, that nobody actually in the past 10 years has wanted to plan a terror attack in India. I mean, think of 26/11. I was just fresh out of college, fresh out of university. In fact, I just come back. And a blast was one thing. These 10 guys came on a boat, and for almost 3 days, the ATS team of Mumbai was near wiped out. Karkare, Salaskar, these were supposed to be the top encounter cops. They were wiped out. It took the heroism of people like, a constable by the name of Tukaram Omle, who literally had to hold a gun, a machine gun, an AK-47, and is pumping bullets into his stomach, okay, in order to catch Kasab. And and it's not ironical, the main prosecutor on the UPA, Ujjwal Nikam, who prosecuted Kasab, just joined the BJP, is contesting for the BJP. So it can mean everything or it can mean nothing. That's, of course, open for the conversation, and is for the UPA, is for P. Chidambaram, is for others who were sending the dossiers to come out and explain. Was the dossier an effective technique? And try to convince the people of India, yes, the dossiers were the right way to go. The surgical strikes, the Balakot strikes, acting tough on Pakistani terror, shutting down trade with them, shutting down conversation with them was not the wrong way to go, because that has perpetuated more terror. On the straightforward question, that's the short summation of what the answer he's given is on your screens. But the broader juxtaposition for you to converse on, I've just put out for you.
Okay, let's take a look at that excerpt.
Terrorism that, former 2611 prosecutor has just joined the Bharatiya Janata Party. Is there a difference when we say that in 10 years no major Indian metropolis has seen a terror attack? Is there something dramatically different that has happened? Is it the surgical strikes? Is it better intelligence? What are we getting right?
Look, that's a complex issue because a lot of it must necessarily, obviously always be behind a certain veil. But overall, there is a message in the last 10 years. The message in the last 10 years is, unlike what happened at 2611 in Mumbai, we will not turn the other cheek. If anything happens in India, there will be consequences to other people. I think that message has gone through loud and clear.
All right. Ambassador Ashok Sajjanar, the concluding remark that he makes, S. Jaishankar, about if there are attacks on India, if India's sovereignty is jeopardized, there are going to be consequences. And the last 10 years of Modi government reflect just that.
No, absolutely. You're very right. No attack on India will go unresponded. And you know what our adversary was trying to do, what Pakistan was trying to do is that if you try to come into our territory, we have these nuclear weapons. We are a nuclear weapon state. So we can use this, if there is a threat to our existence, threat to our integrity and sovereignty, then we are going to use the nuclear. We have the possibility of using nuclear weapons. And we are now developing the tactical nuclear weapons also, and we can sort of, use that without going, full steam ahead as far as, all the nuclear arsenal that is at our disposal. And I think our establishment, our decision makers and policy makers were also somewhat apprehensive that what if we were to go in as far as Pakistan is concerned, and if they were, in this fit of madness were to use that, what would this lead to ultimately? And I think through whether it is the Uri strikes or it is the Balakot strikes, we have completely torn to smithereens this blackmail, this Damocles sword that Pakistan sought to put over our head, that they can use nuclear weapons. So I think Pakistan has been thoroughly exposed that if they are going to take any action against us,
yes,
unleash any of these terrorists against us, they will have to bear the consequences, and only they will be responsible. The last point I'll make here is that the whole world stood with us, because they knew that India was on the right. They knew that India was doing it in self-defense. The whole world has stood by us, and I think we have been more than vindicated in our actions. So the message is clear, and that is why after 2019 February, we have seen no attack worth the while on taking place on India.
Professor Nalapat, as Ambassador Sajjanar was saying, gone are the days then when if we are having a dispute with Pakistan over Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, or there are terror attacks that are taking place in our country, or there is cross-border terrorism that emanates from Pakistan into our country, and we are reaching out to the United Nations and international bodies and countries, the likes of United States of America or the OIC, and the statement that they go about saying is that this is a disputed area, line of control. Pakistan-occupied Kashmir is disputed area, and therefore there needs to be international intervention to resolve this issue. Versus today, I don't think there are such statements that are made. The countries, the international organizations are satisfied that India is tackling the issue. They are satisfied and go about saying that it is India and Pakistan's bilateral matter and it needs to be resolved between two countries. So there is quite the distance that has been traveled in terms of the ability of India to again influence the countries, influence these powerful nations to toe the line that India wanted them to.
Well, there's no doubt about that. And I think what is important is that they know now that India has got the determination to ensure its own defense. And this, in the past, there was a perception that Pakistan could use could use nuclear weapons. The fact is, the nuclear state, it's very, very difficult to conceive of a nuclear state attacking another nuclear state for a simple reason that if you escalate into a nuclear conflict, well, that is going to lead to complete catastrophe, including your own country. Now, that simple strategic truth that a nuclear power cannot blackmail another nuclear power was ignored, frankly, by policymakers of those days. But today, yeah, that strategic truth is being followed by the Modi government. And as a consequence, we saw the Balakot strikes, for example. We saw a very robust response. And the important point, Megha, is very simple. The Pakistan and China want to segment their relationship. For one side will be the border, frontier, violence. Other side will be economics, people to people, culture, whatever you have it. But the fact is that the whole thing forms a seamless single entity. You can't say that, okay, I've got a virus raging in one part of my body, so the rest of the body there's no problem. Unless you deal with that particular virus first, the whole body will be infected. And that is what has happened in this government. The government has made it absolutely clear to both Pakistan and China that if you resort to violence against India, if you try and create disputes where there are none as an excuse for grabbing Indian territory, that will not be tolerated. I think that's a very welcome development. It's taken 7 decades, but I'm glad it's taken place.
Major General Dhruv Katoch, as was being mentioned by Rishabh as well just a moment ago, about how the dossier diplomacy and the note verbals and the summoning of envoys from Pakistan really didn't cut it in being able to fortify and protect our inhabitants, our people, our citizens, as was reflective in the 26/11 attacks. The fact that is shocking is that up until now, we have not been able to grab hold of the perpetrators, the orchestrators. There is one who has fled to United States of America, David Headley. The CIA refuses to give information about his whereabouts. And the other one is sitting smug in Pakistan, which is the Lashkar-e-Toiba chief, Hafiz Saeed. The fact that if India had, with the political will and the diplomacy that was aggressive, shown Pakistan that we are not going to sit tight, we are not going to be under any pressure and act all submissive and diplomatic in resolving the situation, there could have been action taken. There could have been perhaps a Hafiz Saeed sitting behind our jails languishing or even hanged to death.
Thank you, Megha. Yes, I totally agree with you. I think for a very long time, India was, let us say, blackmailed, as the ambassador used the word, by the nuclear card which Pakistan was playing, till finally we had to call the nuclear bluff. You know, I remember when a surgical strike had been carried out within Myanmar. That was before we carried out the surgical strike on Pakistan. One of the Pakistani ministers made a remark that, listen, we are not Myanmar. And then he added, and India must remember that we have got the nuclear bomb. So when we carried out the surgical strike, both these ideas which Pakistan was holding were demolished. Yes, Pakistan is a Myanmar. And number two, that nuclear bluff will not work any longer. I think what has been added now is the element of deterrence. That, okay, you do something, there's going to be consequences. So far, what was happening was that they would send in terrorists and we would kill those terrorists at some point or the other. But the point was that the people, the Pakistan military, who are the real perpetrators, they were never punished. And now the punishment is actually going to them. They are feeling the pinch as to what the consequences will be, and that has actually made a difference. So I think so long as we have, now that we have maintained a strong posture, it is not just military, it is also economic, it is diplomatic and political. So all pressure has been applied by India. Pakistan today finds itself isolated on the world stage.
Yeah.
Militarily, of course, they are no patch.
So I think this policy is something which is working. We have made it very clear to them. There will be no talks, or rather, I'll rephrase that. Talks and terror cannot go together.
Yeah.
And that policy has been very, very effective. Today, all these Pakistani actors and cricketers want to come to India. We have said, no, we don't want you. You wanted a separate country based on an Islamic identity. You got it. Now learn to live there. I think that message has gone very clearly.
Okay.
And I hope that policy is followed.
Yeah.
Megha.
Major General Sudhakar ji, the narrative that has been put forth by the government, and rightfully so, when the Prime Minister and the Defence Minister say, "Ghar pe ghus ke marenge," when there are surgical strikes that showcase positive results and Pakistan is put in its place, versus what the opposition continues to hanker over, whether they question over the authenticity or reality of the surgical strikes, if they ever actually happened. This was the question that was raised by the Congress in the last general elections that took place, when the campaigning was happening and brickbats were being exchanged between the two political parties, the BJP and the Congress. Not just that, there have been a certain regional parties within our country who continue to push forward the idea of having conversation, having dialogue with Pakistan to find a resolution, something which is akin to towing the line of the Pakistanis. What does this make you understand of what the opposition is all about?
Megha, good morning. Good morning, because I am speaking from the Pacific coast, and thanks for taking me for this beautiful panel discussion. There is no ambiguity, Megha. In your question lies the answer. And I would, despite being a military man, I also have a responsibility as a citizen of the country. I think people fail to identify the problem correctly, and they acutely miss out in thinking through what they are saying. So having said that, I would commend and appreciate the leadership of the present dispensation for the articulations they have made that hum ghar pe ghus ke marenge. This reflects nothing but a resurgent India, because there are a couple of issues, if you allow me to dilate, I would like to highlight. As I look at India from the west coast of America or from the Pacific coast, with a little break that I have imposed on myself. You see, I look at India as on a cusp of a revolution which is going to bring about change in the geopolitics and the global order. Why am I saying this? Is because we are in 21st century. There are notable milestones which have occurred post 9/11. I'm not talking about 26/11. 9/11 has been a turning point, as per my assessment, wherein the superpower of the world, the unipolarity, was challenged for the first time across the Atlantic, and the Twin Towers were brought down in no time. Therefore, there is some understanding of the very word that we use. We have been clamoring for ages, that terrorist and terrorism. Therefore, what has happened is then has been actually the test that we have carried out, underground nuclear device in 1998. There has been a shift of regressive relationship with the United States to progressive relationship with the US. And this century, I would say, initial 2 decades, there have been very substantive negotiations and agreements with USA, which are having a telling impact. Third and most important thing, Megha, is that when India was being subjected to terrorist attack in late 90s and early 2000s, the economy was in doldrums. It was just about kickstarting. Come 2007-8, we have reached a figure of 1 trillion. And by about 2014, it has reached a figure of $2 trillion US dollars. And now we are touching a figure of 4 trillion. So economy has got a very important aspect.
Okay.
Last but not the
Quickly,
least
sir.
is the political stability. The political stability. Unless the leadership and the political stability of the dispensation has got adequate majority, such kind of assertive and proactive actions cannot be taken. Therefore, I would urge everyone in the country to think through, because we are passing through a stage of elections. It's about everyone's responsibility to apply ourselves and put our finger on the button which matters. Back to you, Megha.
Pathakrit, then again the question, and as was being put forth by Sudhakar ji, about is this just a mere coincidence? And are we too naive to think that up until 2014, the number of terror attacks that were witnessed by India were completely vanished after 2014 and a mere coincidence? Do we then reflect it on the increased, better, more powerful economy that India has become, and therefore the terror attacks have reduced? Or we talk about an economy, a country that is being run by decisive leadership with its political policy, with its foreign policy, with its diplomacy that it has carried forward in different spheres, including in tackling terrorism, that has allowed India to be in a safe position for its countrymen to live and breathe a sigh of relief?
Megha, first of all, let me tell you, in the last 10 years, I would not be surprised if thousands of sleeper cells have been neutralized silently. And that was probably one of the first key steps that was necessary. Secondly, you must also understand the kind of effort taken by Government of India to crack down on the money laundering syndicates, the narco syndicates, the organized crime syndicates. Each of these play a critical role in creating the support system for terrorism to thrive. We must remember 1993 terror attack would not have happened without the organized crime group of Dawood Ibrahim. So all that effort has been made. Also, the UAPA, the changes in the amendments of the UAPA and the NIA Act played a critical role. Apart from that, let me tell you, the political leadership, I'm not talking about the army, before 2014, the political leadership used to behave like a crybaby. They used to think that I go to America and complain and my work is done. So what used to happen is that the deep state of United States, deep state of Pakistan, I beg your pardon, the deep state of Pakistan had a sense of impunity, that come what may, nothing would happen to me. That impunity has been completely broken today. India has altered the threshold of counter-terror response mechanism. I can tell you, Megha, and I'm sure all of the veterans sitting over here know, there are enormous and incredible number of times attempts have been made in the last 10 years also. Most of those have been thwarted. Since those were not working out, other attempts have been created to create anarchy in this country through mob violence, through anarchy, through those, staged protests, to create siege of the cities. All that thing has also been attempted to create riot-like situation. So we must understand efforts have been made, but you had a decisive leadership which made it very clear that I will not allow terrorism and organized violence to impact my economy because it is growing. Because every time, what happens? Every time a terror attack happens or you have a picture of disturbance in the country, it impacts foreign investment, it impacts your economic prospect of the future. Also, let me tell you one thing, you mentioned something that international organizations are satisfied about India's work, so they are siding with India. It's not so. The international organizations know today that even if they object, India doesn't care two hoots. India will do what is necessary for India's protection under the India First philosophy. So what is important today here to understand is that it is no more the prerogative of the Americans and the Europeans to take action whenever terrorism happens there. India, as a $4 trillion economy today, and as a country with 1.4 billion people, have equal rights to take decisive action.
Right.
And the very important point is this: not only that the counter-terror operations were done, not only the doctrine was altered, but the consequences were managed diplomatically, because of which everybody realized it is time we accept that India has the legitimate right to take action.
Absolutely.
So far as the political leadership is concerned, I have nothing to say to them. I mean, everybody knows what the predicament of them is. But, it is because of decisive leadership that we have relatively better internal stability today than what it was before 2014. Otherwise, Pakistan has not done anything less to create problem in India, and so perhaps other countries, including the one who sponsor.
Okay, all right. I'm out of time. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast. Those were some very categorical, specific comments that were made by Minister S. Jaishankar in that exclusive chat on NewsX.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.